AOPA's Pilot Information Center here in Frederick, Maryland. Joining me today is Joe Danielli. Joe is a senior engineer with Leidos in their Flight Service Station Group. Good evening, Joe. First of all, our program this evening will run approximately 1 hour, maybe a little shorter, most likely just a little longer. So for planning purposes, if you're planning on watching the whole thing, you'll be in for an hour. In case you lose audio and can no longer hear us, or if the slides stop advancing, we recommend that you refresh your browser view. Worst case, if you have to kill your browser and reopen it and click the link again, either Tactic A or Tactic B should fix that problem. One of the most common questions we get is, hey, this is a great webinar. Will it be available later? And the answer is always yes. The GoToWebinar platform that we use does record this session for later viewing. You will receive an email about a half hour after we close this evening with a link where you can go back and watch the webinar again. For example, maybe if you get interrupted halfway through and don't get to stay with us for the whole duration. So, with that being said, Joe, what have you been up to lately?
A lot. There's a lot going on at Leidos. As you know, we were previously Lockheed Martin, and we were acquired by Leidos.
Okay.
The division or organization that does flight service was picked up by Leidos, lock, stock, and barrel, from the people to the machines to the buildings, so everything is exactly the same. What you knew 6 months ago is what you will see today. Everybody is the same, so services have not changed at all.
Okay, great. So really what I'm hearing is you've got a different company name on the business card.
Yes. And to note, our CEO, Mr. Crone, he is an active pilot.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting him, so I'm sure he uses the service.
Wonderful. It's worth noting, of course, Joe, you and I crossed paths on various occasions. For example, we had a very popular, wildly successful webinar series last year, which was well received, and we covered a lot of the things that we will touch on this evening, but we're, of course, delving into new territory tonight, so this session isn't redundant. There's just a little bit of overlap. But beyond the webinars that we do, we cross paths for occasion for example, on occasion in the field, like our AOPA fly-ins.
Right. And we've been to all of the regional events. We're going to be there next year. We go to all the different events, aviation-related events, and that's primarily why we're putting this one together on ICAO. It's inevitable that at least 25, 30, 40% of the pilots come up to us asking about the new ICAO Fly Platform. So we thought, hey, what better way to team up with AOPA and get the word out and at least go through a little bit of what's coming down the pipe.
Excellent. Good timing. On one hand, for point one, I love hearing that 30-40% of pilots are coming to you asking questions about the ICAO flight plan in particular from an awareness perspective. Not only the fact that it exists, but the fact that at some point in the near future, pilots will be required to use it.
Right.
On that note, however, tell me a little bit about when they're going to be required to use it and for what scope.
Okay, so the FAA would like the flying public in the U.S. to start using the ICAO flight platform, and that is going to take effect roughly January of 2017. Once that happens, what the FAA envisions is that all flight plans that are filed in the NAS will be on the ICAO, or what they call International Flight Plan Form. I'll be calling it ICAO, the ICAO form today. That's even for domestic flights. I mean, they're required for international flights, but domestic, St. Louis to Macon, Georgia.
Okay. Okay, good. So that timing, that's the current.
That's the outlook. That's the outlook right now. That's the planned date, based on how all of the vendors get their software in place and everything works out planning-wise. It should be sometime early into 2017. So that date could move one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably not the other.
Yeah.
Not up.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, what are we? What are you looking at covering?
And the last point I do want to make is that the military is not exempt, but they're not being forced to use an international flight platform. So,
Okay.
all right. So what I'm going to do is maybe a couple minutes of reintroduction to people who already have accounts, and if you don't have an account, an easy way to just show you how to get an account. This is our homepage, 1-800-WXBrief.com, just like the telephone number. Made it easy. If you already have an account, you just put your username and password. Everybody knows that. If you do not have an account, there's a button there that says Create New Account. So all you have to do is hit that button, and literally we're looking at 5 or 6, 7 questions you have to answer, and you've created an account. The good thing is if you create an account on the website, it's automatically linked back to an account if you have a profile in the flight service station system already. So you don't have to re-input all of that data. It's already there for you.
What is the database key, for lack of a better expression? How do you, what piece of...
Oh, okay. So, like, you're asked to put in your name, your email address, things like that, your tail number, call sign, and then what our system does goes back and looks in the main database, finds a match, it says, yep, okay, and it hooks it up, and then you're off and running.
Great.
If not, then we can take manual steps to connect those for you.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our members on the line this evening have had that pleasant discovery moment when the specialist they're speaking with knows some of their information.
Correct.
You're coming out of Frederick as usual today, Mr. Mack. I mean, it's not quite that, but when you give them a tail number and they say, okay, all we need is.
Yep. All you have to do is ask them to create a profile on you, and then they have all that information, and it keys off of your phone number when you call in.
Okay.
When you're, if you're not logged in, we've had pilots asking us to, they would like access to certain things on our website, like the weather, the airport information, the UAS activity. You can see that throughout the nation, what's active from UAS perspective, some helpful links, and a help dialog. Okay, once you're logged in, this should look familiar to the pilots who have an account. You have full access to everything that's on our website, filing flight plans and things like that. Just give you a 30-second overview. This is our pilot dashboard. These are the services that you can sign up for. They're all free. It's a free service. There's no fee. The first one is the Adverse Condition Alerting Service. This alerts pilots if there's any adverse conditions that pop up along their route of flight, and that starts 2 hours prior to departure time. TFR, a lot of those have been popping up all over the place, and you'll see some more as we traverse through this election period. Easy activate, easy close. We allow pilots to, for VFR flight plans, activate and close their flight plans electronically with the touch of a button on their iPads, smartphones, things like that.
Super cool. We're not in the era where we have to do it via telegram or carrier pigeon anymore.
Correct. We're staying up with the times, and we know people want to communicate. Close reminders. If you happen to forget to close your flight plan, and I know nobody online has ever forgotten to close their flight plan, but if for some reason you forget to close the flight plan, we'll send you a reminder 20 minutes after you land or your estimated arrival time to close your flight plan. We'll also send you notices if you file an IFR flight plan and that IFR flight plan changes. We'll send you the new route. And search and rescue, this is an enhancement. If you have a device such as a Spot or a global Spot or a DeLorme, these devices they send position reports and to the carrier, and what they've done is they will forward them over to us. So if you activate a flight plan and you're connected to us, we'll monitor that flight along the way. This is not Big Brother watching you. This is not flight following. Our specialists don't even know that the flight's being monitored until something bad happens. If we stop receiving reports, we'll then start a search and rescue event.
Right. And those buttons, those are some of the super cool features that you've brought on over the past few years that we've also covered in depth, especially in our webinar series last year. So if you go to our website and look in online learning, you can find our webinar series, click on the tab for 2015, and you'll find the 3 different episodes that you and I and Josh will put
Right,
together where
right.
our listeners tonight can
A lot of details.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of details.
Exactly.
This just gives you a view of if you have any active flight plans or proposed flight plans, they'll be listed here, and you can action them right from this pilot dashboard. And we also give you access to different weather and airports. You can pick 3 airports as favorites, and then we, right on the homepage there, we'll give you the METARs, the TAFs, and the NOTAMs for that particular airport, and some weather products too.
And personally, I like the fact that you've got the ability to have more than one favorite. You know, my home airport, my whole life here has been Frederick here.
Right.
But we don't have our own TAF.
Correct.
So when I go to get weather, I basically run Frederick, I run Martinsburg, and I run Dulles, for example.
Right.
So I can make sure I have a TAF in that fold. So that's wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, and you'll see no data available for the TAF.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
there you go. Okay.
I have Frederick as one of my homes there. All right. So after you log in, you hover over the flight planning and briefing button. You select briefings and flight plans and nav logs. You click on that, and it brings you to your flight plan form. And you say, "Why are you showing me the NAS and domestic flight plan form? It's going away, right?" Well, I just wanted to say it's time to say goodbye to the domestic flight plan form. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We'll reference it here and there, but we need to move away from this and move into an ICAO flight plan form, and it's not as bad as people think.
And not to sound preachy, and we didn't cover this earlier, but not a bad thing to maybe just start, once you've learned to use it, start using it now. We talked about the fact that there is a cutover after which point it will be required,
Right.
But conversely, there's no reason you can't start using it all the time now.
You could have used an ICAO flight plan form years ago. There's no reason why you can't use an ICAO flight plan form now.
Great.
Good point, Ferdy.
So everyone's got some homework.
Yeah, well, you might as well start using it. All right. So this is the International or ICAO flight plan form. What I wanted to show you, I'm just going to run through some basics of what the form looks like, and then we're going to go step by step, field by field, and talk about the similarities and the differences of the flight plan form. We have these little camera icons throughout the website. If you're stuck and you need a refresher, click on the website, the camera, and it gives you a very detailed description of what that function is all about. Very good.
And I have to throw kudos to Leidos in that regard because the videos are fantastic.
Yeah,
They're very helpful, and I think they do a great job of not leaving any question or stone unturned without being at the expense of being too lengthy. This portage is just right.
Thank you, and I'm going to give a shout out to Eric. He's our guy out in Prescott. He does all of our videos, and he does a wonderful job. Just a smart man, knows everything about the NAS you possibly could know, and he just knows the airspace and these functions. So at the bottom there, you'll see a red bar around all the functions that we have on our page there on the flight plan form. The goal we set out to achieve was everything should be accessible from a page. I don't want to have to go from page to page to page to file, then to brief, then to get a nav log. Everything's available on this page right here. I can get a briefing, I can file the flight plan, I can amend my flight plan, I can get a nav log from here. So one-stop shopping. Let's see. This is a briefing corridor and moves aloft. This is standard. We just show you that 50 is the minimum. You can get a bigger briefing corridor. That's the minimum allowable. When I say allowable, that the FAA wants us to return. Everything inside that corridor gets returned in a briefing. So we can't go anything smaller than that, but we can widen that if you would like.
So that's 25 miles each side.
Each side of the center line,
Yep.
right.
Okay.
Then we allow you to view and pull back up your recent flight plans. Favorite flight plans, we're going to talk a little bit about this later on, but very, very helpful tool to allow you to retrieve flight plans. We talked a little bit about our services in the beginning. Just pick on one of them here, our Easy Activate and Easy Close. It's very simple. All I do is put in my cell phone number or an email address or both, and that's how I'm notified. 30 minutes prior to departure, it sends me an email or a text message to activate the flight plan, and then 30 minutes prior to arrival time, it'll send me an email, allows me to close my flight plan.
You just answered one of our questions asking, I heard that this Easy Activate, Easy Close can be done on a device. Do I have to get an app, or do I need to log into the website?
Just the website, and once you're set up, or you can do it from a specialist. If you have a profile, you call a specialist and say, I want to enable this, and the specialist will set up your profile as well.
Well, okay, and then extending that question, I think they're really asking, when I want to activate or close, do I have to use an app? Do I have to log into the website?
No, you'll get an email and you'll get a text. Once you're done and filed and closed, you don't need to have your tablet or laptop. You just have to have a smartphone with you at that point, or a tablet.
Okay, great.
All right. Good question. All right, so the flight plan form is broken up into two sections, and the first section that we're going to go through is the basic flight plan information. We're going to go through this section first, and then the other section, the bottom part there, that is your supplemental information. Top part is what gets transferred between ATC facilities as basic flight planning information. The supplemental information is what we hold in flight service. Mm-hmm. In the unlikely or unfortunate event of a search and rescue, we have the information we need to help the rescuers or searchers, help them out knowing exactly what you're capable of with respect to survival gear and things like that.
Okay.
So it's a search and rescue thing more than anything else. We do send that information between us and Canada and Alaska as well. But those are the two basic areas, and we'll go through each one. So we're going to jump right into it. Now, aircraft ID. You'll see I have green all around it. It means there's no difference between the NAS flight plan form, the domestic, and an ICAO. It's a standard 7 alphanumerics. It's got to start with a letter file followed by 1 to 6 digits. That's why it's green. No change. What I wanted to point out, for each of these fields, each name of the field, if you hover over aircraft ID, that's what's displayed. You'll get a quick help dialog box to show you what the format looks like.
Excellent.
And what that field is required for. If I want to file a flight plan, I have to provide an aircraft ID. If I want to amend it or get a route briefing, I have to supply that, or we won't allow it. That's our way of keeping track of what's going on with respect to an aircraft. Mm-hmm. Okay? And like I said, all of those fields, you hover on it, you'll get a some help dialog. Okay, I'm going to start out with a very simple aircraft ID, and we're going to move over to the flight rule section, field. This is different, and you'll notice in the center there with the hashed red lines, what I did was I hovered over flight rule, and the box up top in red is displayed, but I clicked on flight rule. That brings up this extra dialog box that gives you more details about the formatting of that particular field. So you say, okay, I know VFR, I know IFR, what's a YFR, and what's a ZFR flight plan? Mm-hmm. In this box here, it clearly explains a YFR flight plan is a composite flight plan. Starts out as one flight rule and makes a transition to the other flight rule. So YFR starts out as an IFR flight plan, then makes a transition to VFR. ZFR is just the opposite.
Okay.
All right?
That's handy.
Yeah, just something different in ICAO. You have the ability to make that transition. All right. Okay, I'm going to pick VFR. All right, and as you select things, everything's brought back into your flight plan form. We go to the flight type field. Again, there is no flight type field in a domestic flight plan, mm-hmm. But at ICAO they do. They have scheduled and non-scheduled. Those are IFR related. G for general aviation, M for military, X for other, meaning it doesn't fall into one of the top 4 selections there. And D, that's something new. The FAA has asked us to implement. This is a flight rule that you would select this if you are going to enter the Air Defense Identification Zone, ADIZ, if you're going to DVFR flight plan. Example, Fort Lauderdale to Bahamas. You are penetrating or entering the ADIS. This is going to be a DVFR flight plan.
Okay.
All right, and it's just one way of identifying that it is a DVFR flight plan. The good thing is our system will tell you if you're penetrating the ADIS. We have to notify certain law enforcement agencies, and that's how we do it.
Okay. I think it's worth noting while we're talking about crossing an ADIS boundary, going to the Bahamas, for example, that this is not sufficient to meet the burden that a pilot needs to meet in order to properly do all the filing required. Namely, I'm getting at EAPIS.
Correct.
That's a separate system.
Completely separate.
One does not talk to the other. They are
correct.
Both required. You must have GVFR or IFR flight plan on file across the ADIS.
Right.
And you have to have a manifest in place with EAPIS.
Correct.
So separate system still required, but here's how you would accomplish the filing portion.
And what this does, it gives you, when you're entering an ADIS, you have to have a beacon code. Mm-hmm. So this gives you, we will assign a beacon code to this flight plan, and you'll know about it. Mm-hmm. You'll be informed. So, okay. So for us, we're going to select G for general aviation.
Looks like the bucket we're going to fall into mostly.
Yeah, that's what we're focusing on. Mm-hmm. And it brings it back to the flight plan form. The number of aircraft, 1. This is standard. It just defaults to number 1. You can change it if you want to put more than one aircraft. Say you're ferrying an aircraft, you can fill out with maybe a couple people in tow. Mm-hmm. You can fill out one flight plan, put 3, and then you just put in the other information, your remarks, what you guys are, what they're doing, and all you need is a single flight plan.
Formation flight, sure.
Formation flight's another one. Yep. But it defaults to 1. Aircraft type and wake turbulence, they go hand in hand. I talk about them separately, but I'll explain in a minute why they go hand in hand. Aircraft type, the same. We haven't changed anything. Cessna 172, P-28A, they're all there.
And again, you've got that in a green box indicating that it is
the same. There is no change here.
Right.
We have a little search dialog tool here, a little magnifying glass. When you select it, you can then type in something that you want to search on. It could be, it has to be at least 2 letters, I put in Piper. I did not do an exact match. I hit search. I come up with a Cherokee Warrior, the second model, and it's a P-28A. So all I do is select it, and it's brought back into the flight plan form. Mm-hmm. Now, wake turbulence. This is another field that's not identified or is not included on the NAS flight plan form. Wake turbulence is used by ATC for spacing, things like that, and it helps them understand what the characteristics and performance of that aircraft is. I'm confident they know what a P-28A is, but if they had an off-the-wall aircraft type that they weren't familiar with, at least they know it's a light, a medium, or a heavy. At least they know right away what it's capable of doing.
Sure.
All right. And again, I clicked on wake turbulence, and it brought up that extra dialog box to show me what the weight classifications are for those particular wake turbulence fields. So I'm going to pick a light. And actually, I didn't pick a light. What I did was I put P-28A into the type field, the aircraft type field, and as soon as I tab out, it tells me it's a light. It puts in light for me.
Nice.
You don't have to worry about it. This is what ATC is expecting, so we don't want to have crosstalk with ATC at all. So we made it so you put in your aircraft type, we'll tell you what the wake turbulence is.
Okay. Oh boy.
Yeah, aircraft equipment. This one's one of the more gnarly aircraft fields. There's about 4 of them on this form, and this is one of them. This takes up 64 characters, alphanumeric characters. And that's what they look like. Very different from what you and I are used to.
Good old /A/U/G.
Yep. There's no more of that anymore. And what I thought I would do is bring up the NAS equipment suffixes. we've gotten a lot of comments or suggestions. You know, hey, why don't you, if I have a slant end, why can't you just convert that? Mm-hmm. Well, we can't. If you look on the left there, they're in the green. The three that are boxed off or highlighted there are the only ones that make a conversion over to ICAO cleanly.
Right.
Cleanly.
And to be fair, when you say you can't map the rest, it's not that you're not smart enough to do it. Obviously, you're smart enough to do it, but the problem is there's not a one-to-one mapping. There's
Correct.
Not a one-to-one translation.
Correct. So we had to make a decision that, you know, we just can't make a bold sweep from domestic over to ICAO. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to throw that up there just so you could see the difference and the magnitude from before and now what we're going to be moving to. There's a lot of codes there, and if I didn't say it before, I'll say it now. The ICAO Flight Platform is a very powerful form. It allows you to do a lot more, and it gives you more flexibility. You may not think so, but ATC looks at this and it gives them a lot more flexibility with what they can do for you routing through the airspace. Mm-hmm. All right, so I selected nil at the top there. You'll see the N is highlighted, circled, and you'll notice it deselected everything.
Grade them
so,
out.
Yep, we grade them out. You can't select them. We don't want you to inadvertently select nil and then pick something. You can't have that.
Right, you can't say I've got nothing and something.
And then something.
Sure.
So just a little protection there. I select the S for standard equipment. You'll see that we automatically gray out L for ILS, O for VOR, and V for VHF. You can't now go back and select them again. Mm-hmm. So when you select standard, it includes all of those identifiers. And again, based on what you have in your aircraft, you have to go and pick and choose what needs to be in your aircraft equipment list.
Right, and to that end, by the way, to our members here at our Pilot Information Center, we've already helped thousands of pilots at this point figure out between this and the surveillance information string what is the most likely fit for what they have in their airplane. It's a daunting task.
It is.
If you're not in a Piper Cub with no comms.
Right.
So to that end, feel free to contact us here, and we can try to help you figure out what boxes you would need to check based on your type aircraft. And if you know what is in your aircraft, that's a key point.
Right.
We could then try to help you figure out which boxes to check. So you can give us a call here if that becomes a stumbling block to you.
Very good point. Very good point. So what I do now is I just select OK, and what it does is it brings it back into my flight plan form, and we're moving right along here. So I'm going to move over to the departure field. All right. So I'm hovering over the word departure, and you can see that the format, there's a lot there. But this, if you want to put in a non-standard departure point, and most of us are flying out of non-standard ICAO location identifiers. And when I say standard location identifiers, I mean a four-letter location. KIAD for Dulles, KSTL for St. Louis. You can't have a number in the ICAO world. You can't have a number.
Well, what if I fly out of nearby Clearview, Maryland to Whiskey 2, I believe?
Okay, so I would fly out of South Jersey, out of Hamilton. I forgot to mention that we do have a little search engine there. If you could put anything you want in there, hit search, and it'll bring up it'll match or try to match anything you put in that search criteria. So if you happen to be flying out of a non-standard location identifier, you would put 4 Z's, ZZ, in the departure field.
Okay.
What that is a placeholder, and it says, okay, I've put in 4 Z's, now I'm going to tell you somewhere else what the actual departure point is.
All right.
Little cumbersome, but once you understand it, easy, right? So I put in 4 Zs, and the system, once you tab out, will automatically put DEP slant in there for you in the other information field. That means departure. Where am I going to depart? All I do at this point is type in November 81. That's Hamilton Airport.
Okay.
So now I have 4 Zs, which is a placeholder, and I have departure slant November 81. This flight plan form will be sent off to ATC or whomever, and they'll know that I'm departing out of November 81. Okay. So far, so good?
Yeah.
All right. Departure date and time, standard stuff. Nothing different here. You give me a date and a time, we put it in. Our system defaults to the browser, to the operating system, to what you're logged in, to what your computer has set up for the time zone.
Okay.
Mine is
Excellent.
Eastern Standard Time. So I'm just going to select Eastern Standard Time, but you can, as you can see, you can select any time zone you want. If you're military and you want to put it in UTC, or if your pilot just likes to use UTC, you can select UTC. So I select the time, you put it in. Cruise speed, this one's a little different, not bad though, not bad.
Yeah, this bit me when I first tried to create an aircraft profile a year ago.
Yep, because nobody thinks that you have to precede it with a letter. You want to put in Mach speed, for example. Us old military guys this would be Mach 1.25. This is 1.25 speed of sound.
Okay.
Okay? But most of us don't fly Mach. We're in the knots, right? 110, 150, 160 knots, 220, stuff like that. It's November 0150. So you can't just put in 150.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put N and then 4 digits following it.
And again, that help tip will pop up if I hover over.
Correct.
Hover the cruising speed.
Yep. Well, you talk about the top part there, which says format. Yep. All I do is hover. Every field that I'm going through, that box that you see up top will be what's displayed when you hover over each of the, like when I hovered over cruising speed. It tells you knots has to be an N followed by 4 digits. Mach has to be an M followed by 3 digits.
Okay.
All right.
If it's all the same to you, I'm just going to probably forget about the Mach format.
Yeah.
Okay.
And level, same thing. This one's pretty straightforward too. We're going to use the same digits that we used, except you have to now precede it with an F for flight level or A for altitude.
Okay.
And I think most of us understand or know that flight levels are 18,000 and above, and altitudes are below that, 17,999 and below. So if you want to fly at a flight level, you would put F185. That's flight level 18,500.
All right.
All right. If I want to fly at a normal altitude like GA flies, it would be A095. That means I'm flying at 9,500 feet. Pretty straightforward. This is another kind of a gotcha field. Not that it's a really difficult one, it's just understanding or knowing which one to pick.
Right.
If you have ADS equipment on board.
And to that end, by the way, we're looking at the second of two, in my mind, really, new, different, slightly complicated fields between the surveillance equipment box and the aircraft equipment box. But the reason I stopped you for a moment is, number one, these are things that you determine, provided nothing else has changed in your aircraft since the last time. These are things that you determine one time. You figure them out.
Correct.
Analogous to, in the old days, okay, today I'm /uniform with what's in my airplane.
Correct.
And unless I install a GNSS navigator and I go to /golf, I'm going to be /uniform forever. And to that end, once these non-trivial boxes are figured out for your aircraft, you can save that stuff.
That is correct, and we're going to get into that later on, how do you save that in your profile.
Yeah.
But you're right, once you select this, it's in your equipment and it's your profile. You put it in your profile and you'll never have to worry about it again.
And you can never really argue that after that point that it's part of what makes ICAO flight plans complicated, because it's done.
It's done already, yeah. So what I'm going to do is, you'll notice at the bottom half where the ADS equipment is it's grayed out. You can't put an ADS identifier in there until you select an equipment. So what I'm going to do is select C, modes A and C, and I'll select B1. You can't select B1 and B2. You can select a B1, a U1, a V1, and a D1, but you can't select U1 and U2. So we have a little bit of protection there. Sure. So I select a C and B1, and what our system does, it brings it back into the flight plan form for you. Route of flight. This one's, I haven't read, but I almost wanted to do green because there's not much difference between an ICAO flight plan form and a NAS flight plan form. The only real difference is the DCT. Right. You have to, if there's nothing there, you got to put DCT in there, meaning direct. Our system will, if you forget it, or actually we default it there. If for some reason you take it out, we'll take care of it for you. We'll backfill it, so there's no problem there. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's a little bit different here is you can't put a delay in your route field. You have to put it in the other information field, and we'll talk about that later. But everything else is the same. Nav aids, waypoints, there's no special coding to those items or elements at all. Mm-hmm. So, route of flight is typically the same in both.
Right. So coming out of Frederick here, I could say Victor 143, MRB for Martinsburg, Victor 3, Flat Rock, and it's going to know what I mean, just like it used to. Correct. And However, if I don't have Victor Airways intended in the middle, I think you're going to show me that that direct gets used a bit more than...
Well, you can put them in.
Sure.
But if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Exactly.
Right. So I choose to. It's just the way I've learned to use it, and that's what I do.
Okay.
So this is a flight now. We're leaving Hamilton, which is in South Jersey. I'm going to Howie, over to Atlantic City, down to CLVOR. And what I'm going to do now, instead of going over to other information, I'm going to jump down to my destination field, and destination is exactly the same as departure. It has the same characteristics as your departure. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to put in a standard 4-letter ICAO identifier, and that's Wildwood, Cape May. Mm-hmm. So now I'm taking off out of November 81, which is Hamilton, taking a route down to Wildwood. All right. My elapsed time, estimated elapsed time, same as in a NAS flight plan. You just put how long it's going to take you, hour, minute, and I'm going to put an hour and 15 minutes. Pretty straightforward stuff. All right, let's talk about alternates for a minute. This is another field similar to the departure and destination, where in the U.S., there's a lot of airports with non-standard ICAO identifiers. And again, if you want to put a placeholder in the alternate 1 field, ZZZZ, for a non-standard airport like I'm going to do, I'm going to put my alternate as JY04. And you'll see that once I put the 4 Z's in that alternate 1 location, and I cab out, it automatically brings in the ALTN slant. All I do is fill in with JY04. So even if you forget to put it in and you go to File or you go to Brief, it's going to tell you that, hey, you forgot some information here. So it's we do a lot of error checking even before you get to the File portion of it. For my second alternate, I'm going to put Woodbine. Nice little airport down in South Jersey. That's where I did my solo. And then what I'm going to do is jump to other information at this point, just to put in something. I have, just to show you how it works, I'm going to click on the magnifying glass, and it brings up the other information field and all of the subfield elements that you can select. You'll see that departure, DEP, is already selected. ALTN is already selected. That's because they're already in the other information field. I want to add a remark, so I go down and select RMK. Once I do that, it brings RMK into the other information field. Now, if you want to, you can type that in. RMK slant. You don't have to pick it. You can just type it in yourself. At this point, I just type in, I'm departing Hamilton. My alternates are Paramount Air Park and Woodbine. It's just free text field. The other nice thing about the system is our system will, if you had put the remarks field in front of the DEP field, the departure field, when you file it, it will automatically reorder those fields for you, because ICAO is very strict on the ordering of the other information field.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so even if you put it in the wrong order, we'll order it correctly. All right, so what we just did was we did all the fields in a standard flight plan, in the basic flight plan form.
Okay.
Everything we did will be transferred to ATC, and they have that on file. Everything else here is technically optional information, except in our system, in the Leidos flight service system, we require fuel endurance and people on board, just so we know how many people are on board. Again, search and rescue purposes.
Okay.
So we'll step through this, and these are really, really straightforward. It's a brand new thing for pilots, but they're incredibly straightforward. Fuel endurance. How much fuel do I have? 4 hours, 30 minutes. Persons on board. How many people are there? 3. I can have up to 30 characters, alphanumerics in there. I'm not sure why. They just allow you to have it, but I'm just going to put 3. Aircraft color. Again, we allow you to pick and choose the colors you want. For this demo, we're going to do a blue, a brown, and a red. And once you select OK,
Joe, that's a pretty ugly airplane by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's not mine. I picked it because it had BR in there. You can, again, everything that I'm picking here, I mean, you can type. So if you want to type out the word brown, you can. You want to type out the word red, you can, as long as it's separated by space. Actually, I mean, let's separate them, but the point is you can either pick the colors or you can just type in what you want.
Okay.
Supplemental remarks, very simple. These are just remarks pertaining to supplemental information. I picked something really clever. 4 life jackets. I have 4 life jackets on board, pilot in command, that's me. We're going to move down to the emergency radios. This is very basic stuff. We see this, these fields are typically for flights flying over water, spanning maybe the Great Lakes, South Florida over to Bahamas, Gulf flights. We see a lot of supplemental information coming in on flight plans for those kinds of flights. Mm-hmm. Puerto Rico up into the Bahamas. We service Puerto Rico. So emergency radios, I'm going to just pick something for each, and I picked VHF radios for the emergency radios, maritime for the survival equipment, and jackets that are lighted. So again, search and rescue knows what type of survival gear I have on board. And the not last thing, but next to the last thing, dinghies, boats, is what I'm carrying on board. I'm going to say I have 1 of them. We have a capacity for 5 people. The color is orange, and it's covered. So, and then the last thing is the pilot information. Again, free text, just put whatever you want in there. And actually, what you have stored in your profile will be transferred here automatically. So you can add to it if you want, but when you bring up a flight plan mask, it'll be pre-populated with information. Great. All right. Okay. All right. That is it for the basic flight plan, the supplemental, and I'm going to go back to the other information field, and I just want to show you a couple things. Again, you'll see that the format for the other information I'm showing you here, where you have STS, PBN, NAV, COM, data, surveillance, departure. All of those are clearly, you can see the format of each one of those subfields in there. I'm going to do a couple of them. click on the button there, and I want to add a date of flight. The normal flight plan mask only goes out to 22 hours in the future. In ICAO, it gives you a field called date of flight, and I can go out as far as I want.
So that's probably worth highlighting because you said it goes out 22 hours. So let's say it's 9 p.m. right now, and I want to fly at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So there's no date of flight field in the basic mask there. So I'd have to enter, but if I enter 6 p.m., your system's going to assume that that's tomorrow.
Correct.
It's obviously not today because that was 3 hours ago.
Right.
However, you also do something with time in the past as well.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, we will hold
2 hours.
We can go 2 hours in the past, hold a flight plan. You can file one for 2 hours, then we'll hold it. We'll have 22 hours in the future, so it gives us a 24-hour time frame.
Right. So in broad strokes then, if I'm basically flying a day later or more,
2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days.
I'm going to have to use this date of flight, this DOF field in the other info box in order to indicate what day I'm really flying.
Correct. Okay. So you'll put that in there, and then what our system does is automatically, if you put in a date, what we've done is we give you the ability to pick future dates. The system now, our system will automatically format it for you and put the DOF over there. Mm-hmm. And it'll put and this is quirky, it's the year, the month, and the day. So this is 2016, December 25th. So I'm going flying on Christmas.
Okay.
That's going to be my Christmas present.
Now, what if I had hit the magnifying glass and brought up the picker? Mm-hmm. I chose DOF, hit OK. Uh-huh. That would have inserted DOF flash in the second field there.
Right.
But I forgot to type my date in, and I tried to file this. What's going to happen?
A warning will it won't let you file.
Good.
And it'll have an error, not an error, but it'll have a little message on the bottom that said, hey, you forgot DOF. And it'll tell you, it'll make sure. There's nothing you can file. You can't file a flight plan if any piece is missing, if anything is missing.
You're going to validate all that text in that box there. Make sure I don't shoot myself in the foot.
Correct.
Wonderful.
Yep. Let's do another one. We talked about delays. We can't do a delay in a route anymore.
In the route of flight.
In the route of flight. But you can put a delay in, but it doesn't go into the route field. It goes into the other information field. So I'm going to pick it, and it puts DLE, and notice it inserts it in the correct location.
If you say so.
Well, it does.
Most of us aren't going to know what the correct order of
so do you see the order?
Oh, I do.
There you go. So STS comes first, PBN comes second, remarks are last.
Got it.
All right, so we even ordered it in the right, but the point I'm trying to make is if you had typed DLE and you put it first, when you go to file, we'll go shuffle it and put it in the right place.
Nice.
All right. I'm going to put a delay, and I'm going to delay over CIO VOR. Mm-hmm. Again, if you don't know the format for the delay, click the other information there, and it'll bring up the format for you.
Great.
Okay. We'll do real quick. We'll step through special handling, PDN, and performance. And I'm going to step through these quickly. STS, special handling. These are special situations, very specialized flights. Heads of state are on board, or you're in a search and rescue mode. This is a non-RVSM flight. Humanitarian, I picked medevac for this one. Our website has all of this information, but I'm going to pick medevac for this demo. PBN, very important to getting good routing. Gives the controller, it tells them exactly your capabilities. I'm going to pick RNAV 10 and RNP approach for my PBN. And the performance, I'm going to pick I fly between 169 and 224 knots. I select that, and everything's brought back into the other information field. The point I'm trying to make here is pick what you want, hit the go button, and bam, it's brought into the field for you. You don't have to type any of this stuff out except for the things you need to type out manually, like remarks fields and things like that.
Great. Great.
PBN will require an R in your aircraft equipment. our system will automatically put that in or notify you that you need the R in the equipment if it's there. So again,
performance-based navigation.
Correct. If you have that in your other information, it's required in aircraft equipment, and we will let you know that it's not there. And the last one I want to do, I think, is the en route estimated elapsed time. This is important for flights that are going to clip or go into someone else's airspace. The example I show here is I'm flying from Seattle. I'm flying up the coast, and I'm going to go up into Juneau. I'm going to land Juneau. The route of flight takes me into Canadian airspace, and you'll say, well, what does that EET CYVR mean? CYVR is the flight information region.
Okay.
Just like we have Seattle Center or Washington Center, Albuquerque Center.
So use
ZDC.
Like I'm sitting here in Washington Center's airspace. Right. That's the equivalent.
That's CYVR. That's Vancouver's flight information region.
Gotcha.
All right?
Okay.
That tells them that we'll send a flight plan to them. They know you're coming. And actually, flight service uses this for handing off search and rescue responsibilities. Mm-hmm. When you're flying up the coast and you're going to leave our airspace, you call us or we'll call Vancouver, and once we know that they have successfully handed off to their center, we will then relinquish search and rescue responsibilities, and they own the search and rescue.
Interesting.
And then they'll hand off to Alaska.
The search and rescue handoff, probably a piece that very few international border crossing pilots have ever thought about.
I'm hoping they do, because this is what keeps us, at least while you're in the U.S. Mm-hmm. It lets us know that we still have you. You're still there. When you contact us, we'll let you go over to, we release you then from a search and rescue perspective. And then you want to be talking to somebody.
By the time your average GA pilot has learned about and taken care of STC licenses, customs decals, filing the flight plan, filing the APIS, taking care of the customs on the other side if appropriate, and all that. Maybe the weather held up, and maybe they even crossed the border at the place and time that they had planned and transmitted. The last thing you're probably thinking about is what other layers are in the background.
Right. But we are still watching. I mean, believe it or not, when you're filing with flight service, we're keeping track. We don't release just because we've activated you and sent you up. We still have that flight plan, and we're still monitoring you for search and rescue.
Yep.
So, what I wanted to do, there are a number of subfield elements in the other information field that we did not and just didn't have time to talk about. Mm-hmm. These are other subfield elements that are not highly used or by general aviation. I'm not saying they're not used at all, but these are less commonly used based on the flight plans we receive and things like that. I thought I would just pull in the formal definitions from the ICAO 4444 document, and they're also, like I said, it's on our website. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to talk about very quickly, because I know we're running out of time here, what we did today was spend a fair amount of time going through each of those fields. The point I really want to stress to you is we have an aircraft profile section that if you take 5 minutes and just set that up, look at all the information that you can pre-store in your profile. Once this is all stored, anytime you bring up a flight plan, it's automatically populated. So everything you see in red is what was stored in your profile. There's very little to fill out from here for an actual flight plan, just your departure, your flight level, things like that, destination. One other point is, if you have a favorite flight plan, we typically fly the same places, or a lot of times the same places. Pick on your favorite flight plan, select one, bring it into the mask. I'm just going to scroll down and pick one of them. And now you can see, by virtue of completing my pilot profile and my aircraft profile and saving a favorite, I have only one field to fill out, and that's my departure time. Period. We always default to the current date, but the only field that is not filled in on that form right now is the departure time. And that's it.
It's kind of a keystone, keeping me from hitting the button when I maybe haven't validated personally with my eyes, checked all the fields.
Right.
So it won't let me file it, but on the other hand, it's 99% of the way there. All I have to do is say 3 o'clock, boom.
Right. And if you want to change your departure, your destination, and your route, I mean, everything else is going to be the same. I mean, you have the same fuel tanks. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, but anyway,
that's great.
I think that's where we're going to...
Well, actually, we've got a few more minutes. Did you want to cover just the evaluate departure time segment?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay.
The evaluate, yeah. So this is one of our features that we implemented, and it really was born from a question from one of the AOPA staffers, the safety gentleman. He goes, "Joe, you really got a great website?" He said, "But," he goes, "you don't tell me when I can leave." He goes, you give me all this information, but when can I leave? And so we brought that back, and the engineers started, round tabling, and this is what we came up with. So we have an evaluate button on the departure date and time form there. And what you need to do is just put in your departure point, your destination, and the time.
Now, to avoid confusion, I hate to stop you. We are on the domestic form right now.
Same as ICAO.
Understood. Just wanted to make sure our viewers understood that, since we've been looking at ICAO all night.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that's a good point. I could have updated this slide, but this is a flight going from Nashua down to Lynchburg, and I'm going to depart on the 5th of October 2015 at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, so what I do is I hit that evaluate button, and what this does is it brings up a snapshot of the conditions along that route of flight from Nashua down to Lynchburg, not current conditions, but what the conditions are based on the TAFs along the route of flight and what they're expected to be along the route of flight. So it's not a snapshot of at that particular time down at Lynchburg, because that would be meaningless if it's a 3-hour flight.
Okay.
So we use the TAF information, and you see I highlighted the 5 o'clock. Now, if I'm a VFR pilot and I look at that and I go, I'm not going. I mean, it just doesn't look good, right? So let me give you a couple of things here. We show you we give you a legend, the green, the blue, the reds, the magenta, and U for unknown. It's maybe too far out in the future. If you see hash lines, that means there's some type of adverse condition in that time period.
Okay.
Could be a TFR, could be a closed runway, could be a closed airport, could be a convective segment. But it's telling you something there is an adverse condition in that time block, or at that particular time and at that location. If you're not sure of what all that stuff means, hit that "what's this" button there, and it tells you that this bar appears if you have a TFR, convective segment, stuff like that along your route of flight.
And, looking at it without that help dialog popped up, it looks like the first chance I've got to have a decent chance is 0900. But then, of course, I've still got hash marks, so I would want to click that and investigate what might those hash marks mean.
Correct. But you'll notice this is not a substitute for a full briefing, for the exact reason you just said, because you have adverse conditions there of something. Something's there. So, but based on the conditions, your tasks, your observation, 9 o'clock looks like the time to go. So you select it, and the 9 o'clock is brought back into your flight plan form. And you're building a flight plan at this point.
Very nice. That's a pretty cool tool. So we're about out of time. One of the questions that's come up a few times during the course of our webinar this evening is we've covered not just what goes in all those new scary, gnarly, I liked your word, those gnarly fields in the ICAO flight plan, but we've also covered how the 1-800-WXBrief.com website can help me, assist me figure out what to put in those fields, whether it's a complicated thing like the surveillance equipment or a more trivial thing like cruising speed, which is still new and different. I can't remember yet off the top of my head, but I will one day. But not everyone's going to use the website. There's still people that are going to call briefers.
Correct.
So what happens then when I need to call a briefer and file a
seemingly complicated ICAO flight plan. Is that possible?
Absolutely. I mean, it's you would give them basically the same information.
Okay.
You don't even have to use the N0150. You just tell them 150 knots.
Oh, I can speak English.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You give them the standard, you just tell them November 81. They'll figure out where it needs to go. You don't have to worry about that. So what you have here is nice, and our specialists are trained. They're going through the training as we speak to specialize in some of the new stuff. And I do want to mention, I forgot to mention this, I do want to mention that when the ICAO mandate comes out in January, February next year, our system is going to be transformed to where our departure field will take non-standard airports.
Meaning I won't have to put 4 Z's in that box and then put the appropriate remark in?
Nope.
Instead, you're going to do the heavy lifting for you.
Correct. So what we're doing now is we're in the process of making all those. They're done. We're just fine tuning them now. But you put November 81 in your departure, you're good to go. You can put November 81 in your alternate, you're good to go. You don't have to do any of that at all. Our system will take care of that for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure, and I'm glad we got to cover this because I'm going to need to start using it soon, it sounds like.
Yeah.
On one hand, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth telling people, you may as well use it now. Well, I guess I should be looking in the mirror. Well, thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate your insight.
You're welcome.
You've got such a wonderful product, and every time we get a chance to review it, there's more new, amazing stuff that everyone seems to really like.
Thank you. And I'll bring that back to our engineers and our developers too.
Wonderful. All right, Joe. Well, thanks so much. And to our listeners this evening, our viewers actually, thanks so much for joining us as well. If you have any aviation-related questions, as part of your membership, you can contact us here in our Pilot Information Center Monday through Friday at 800-USA-AOPA. That's 800-872-2672. And then press option 2 on your phone to speak to our aviation technical specialists. You can also email us at pilotassist@aopa.org. And don't forget to check out Joe's website and my website. Joe's at 1-800-WXBrief.com, and I'm over at www.aopa.org. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. We'll see you.